I created a forum for community conversations. I brought DDOT to the table. I brought businesses to the table. I brought residents to the table to work it out. One of the biggest things that I championed was the Kenyon Street protected bike lanes, the bidirectional bike lanes that traverse from wards 1 and 5. Super important. And I'm advocating, not only advocated for that, but I'm advocating for it to extend beyond Sherman Avenue through 16th Street. Want to make sure that residents are able to use, cyclists can use their bikes safely. Especially when I see mamas now riding there with their babies in the back, they got to get around safely, and especially just recognizing that there are residents and particularly riders who use public transportation that make less than 50,000 K a year. So, we've got to just make it inclusive, right? That moment when we were working with DDOT and we were pushing the plans out to the community to react to, there's a lot of contention, particularly from residents who have who use their car as their preferred mode of transportation, most of them, and for residents who have lived in the community for many, many years and come from families who've even lived there for generations. So what does it mean to have a bike lane in front of your house, right? Like, what does that mean for me? What is the impact going to be for me? How can I get to my house, right? And access it in an easy and safe way. So we just worked that out. We brought cyclists to the table to help us look through the design pattern and what that means as they're traveling and using the bike lanes. It's hard when you have change coming to you, right? When you see a new building go up, you don't know if it's affordable. Nobody told you or asked you for it to go there. You've been living here for years. Change is hard, and I can definitely, as a Black woman, can understand that when I talk to residents who have been living here for a really long time and they look like me, right? I feel that, but especially when there's mistrust in government right now. So my solution to that is, okay, we do need to kind of work through this, right, and have this conversation together as a community. But we also just need to come to a place of balance and hear people out. And what those conversations did was turn into input and feedback and curiosity and questions and information and education. Yeah. And we put pop-ups in the communities so that people could really understand like what this all means before the actual implementation and rollout came through. I'm really proud of that work. And it turned into protected bike lanes on Water Street and on Park Place. The video that I just saw, definitely, I think that community input and having more inclusivity in the design process could have made that a little better. But I think that the work that we did, I'm really proud of, because we were able to put enforcement cameras up and we were able to put bike lane lights where people could be able to stop when cars were coming, and it's coordinated with the timing of the pedestrian lights. Like, those are the things that we worked out together as a community. When people live here, they can be able to provide input on that process. And that's what kind of council member I'll be, from the ground up, that community level, and that pairing that and with the macro level kind of systems thinker approach that I will take as a DC Council representative.
And that's pleasing to hear. Let me just say, a lot of folks can have so many ideas, so many policy solutions that they think would work. But one thing that you constantly kept saying that stood out to me is community input. Give folks the chance to be able to give input and in multiple ways. I'm not talking about your 12:30 meeting when everybody's at work on Monday. Give folks a genuine opportunity for input. And so that alone I admire because I saw you emphasized it, and so that's what I like to hear from our elected officials is that they don't just represent me with their ideas, but they represent me with understanding and hearing my thoughts also. And so, as you said, that's very, very important and vital to me and to our constituents and voters. And before I move on from this subject, let me just personally say, and you know what? I'm gonna be a little, as my grandmama say, I'm gonna be a little mannish. I'm gonna be a little mannish. I want the screen to myself for this one. I want folks to understand how I feel. Listen, to my UPS drivers, to my Uber Eats and DoorDash drivers, to all of my delivery trucks, to even my police officers. You're not supposed to park or sit in the bike lane. Get out of the, Lord forgive me, get out of the damn way. You are contributing to accidents. That's just reality. You are contributing to accidents. I don't know how many times I had to look up and say, Lord, thank you. Because I'm trying to swerve around from here and then I'm trying to swerve back over here because you were parked in the bike lane. Just follow the law. Just obey instructions. Park. Walk. You're getting paid to do it. Do it. All right. All right. Sorry for that.
Here.
It just needed to be said. And that brings
It
us
does.
back
I
into,
feel it. I feel it. I feel your pain.
that brings us right into our next. We're about to go pretty soon, but it's a couple more, two more subjects I want to talk to you about, starting with public safety. You said as your council member, I will champion comprehensive public safety strategies that will continue to drive down crime rates across the district while addressing the persistent challenges facing areas of Ward 1 with long-standing histories of neighborhood-based violence and gun crime. Now, as I have previously stated, this is very important to me, especially in Ward 1. And they all go hand in hand. We all know my belief that poverty begets crime. And just to rewind, I forgot that I had a train of thought that I just remembered that I had when we were talking about the bike lanes and relating to the housing costs. You know, anyone that knows anything about preparing to buy a house, I want to buy my lady a house. I can't buy a car. Buying a brand new car when you're trying to buy a house just messes it all up. It just messes it all up. You can't have that big expense while you're trying to buy a house. You just won't get approved. So, you know, it's almost more logical for me to end up with bike riding and ride sharing. Just want to put that out there. But anyway, back to public safety and gun violence. As I said, I've lost so many loved ones on one corner alone, 14th and V Street. I have gotten so many calls. I have been outside on 14th and V Street with my friends, and I've had to run from gunfire. I just want to emphasize, before I make enemies of my peoples, that this is the same corner for literally over, I want to say over a decade that this has been going on. No solution, no work. One of your competitors, Sir Terry Lynch, said that he went and got some lighting done, and he believes that because his lights there now, that the violence is going to go significantly down. I'll give my thoughts on that at another time. But what are your thoughts? How will you drive down crime in Ward 1?
Yeah, and first, thank you for that question. I just want to recognize that it's systemic. You alluded to it earlier. Research tells us that there's strong connections between poverty and crime. To a community, residents were able to have access to housing, education, early childhood education. So I think that and my platform speaks to this, that we can really try to shift the dialogue to investing more in community supports, making some community investments to prevent crime from happening in the first place. Um, I believe that while our communities are going through this, is we need to have a stronger community dialogue about crime, and being a 10-year ANC commissioner, I've heard it all in a gentrifying community, and how crime needs to be addressed. But I'm always going to bring that community perspective, the social worker in me, who's been there working with families who have interfaced with child welfare, juvenile justice, the criminal justice system. I'm always going to look at how we can move residents upstream from downstream systems and care for them in a manner that where folks have dignity and respect. There's a lot of racial disparities and economic disparities happening in our communities, and I want to make sure that does not go untouched. Those are the things that you'll be seeing in me, is just looking at our budget and seeing how we can prioritize those things and invest in the right things, like violence interruption programs, looking at that to make sure that it's working, and to the model that is initially was designed to do, making sure that we have investments.
Really quick, let me just make sure I heard correctly, because I am I was licensed and ordained. Shout out to my former pastor, Pastor Delonte Golston of Peace Walks DC, who has championed violence interruption tremendously, and actually opened my eyes to violence interruption and its importance. So I do want to make sure that I hear this clear, that you are a supporter of continuing with violence interruption, that you will support continuing funding violence interruption.
Absolutely, 100%. But implementation wise, because there were some changes that were made by our current administration, right? That we must make sure that we're implementing them to scale of what their original design is supposed to be. Right now, it's not. And we know that it works. It's been working in other cities. And I think that more work needs to be done to make sure that we go back to that original design and make sure that the communities are getting what it needs. So funding, yes, absolutely. You got me there, right? But implementation, we've got to talk about it. And that's what the new council member for Ward 1 will have to address. And I'll be there during those conversations.
Implementation.
In addition to investments in gun violence prevention and other types of community supports that have been working, and evidence-based strategies that have been working in the city and other cities.
Very, very important thing to highlight. And also, may I also highlight that, in my opinion, the violence interruption program has been much more effective under our Attorney General, as opposed to the program under our current city's mayoral administration. But you also touched on how when it comes to crime, kind of everything kind of works together, including poverty. And you also mentioned education, which is the final thing that I wanted us to discuss. And of course, I have your excerpt I pulled this from your website. If anyone don't know, please visit RashidaForWard1.com to learn more info. It says that Rashida will champion education policies that center teacher voice, support student wellness, strengthen school community partnerships, and ensure every Ward 1 family has access to high quality, equitable educational opportunities from early childhood through college and career. Every child deserves to be in school, learning, and thriving. Rashida believes that kids are chronically absent. That when kids are chronically absent, it's our job to ask why and fix the problems. Let me explain it. Let me say it again. Fix the problems, not talk about the problems, not give data on the problems, but fix the problems and not punish the child. That's what real support looks like. As an educator, as an employee at a current public charter school, I love what I am hearing. Just alone from the idea of actually fixing the problem.
Mhm.
I think we a lot of times focus on the problem and not always necessarily the solution. So I am happy to hear that, and that's why I continue to emphasize that we're actually talking about fixing the problem.
Mhm.
What will you do um, to help our Ward 1 constituents and to give them the confidence in going and receiving a better education? Their kids, should I say, or even themselves receiving a better Ward
Mhm.
1 education. I know growing up when I was in Ward 1, our family members, I don't think any of them went to a school in Ward
Mhm.
1. They all had to travel. And even when you talk about some of the violence and so forth, some of you can't avoid it. You know, even myself from Potomac Gardens, if I had to get on this train line and go to this school, I wasn't, I'm not a gang member or nothing, but folks know where I live at. And if they saw me, it's on. Like now here I am facing suspension, sometimes facing legal consequences when I was just trying to go to school. Like I didn't, I didn't have nothing to do with it. But so how will you address these concerns and problems?
Yeah, again, strong social work roots, right? I just remembered when I was working in child welfare and I had a foster youth on my caseload. We'll just call him Darius. And I had to go to school multiple times to pick him up, to plead with the principal and the teachers, please don't kick him out, please don't suspend him. How can we work this through together? He was had an IEP, and I worked, and he had lots of services in the school. But I just saw kind of the cracks in the system and how things were failing. What happened if he didn't have a education advocate, if he didn't have a social worker there to represent his needs? What if he wasn't connected to his system and he didn't have a parent that can get off from work and go down to the school and advocate? I can see the big picture and recognize the gaps and flaws, and where government can be stepping in and doing more. And I think that we could be looking at our programming and how we're embedding them in our schools and how we're funding them. Now we do have student level funding that supports students that are marginalized, the students that are in need of support and additional funding. But we also still have underfunded schools. Why is that? I believe in a comprehensive, holistic school model that involves a social worker, a nurse, a mental health support and wellness worker, just things that can be able to address the whole needs of our children and making sure that they're successful in their early learn in their environment. And then for us to really think about how we can start those conversations and address children's needs from birth to career, because not every student will go to college, a four-year college. Not every student can afford a four-year college, particularly what's happening with our administration and how they're gutting our workforce and our federal government and defunding and deregulating our education system through the Department of Education and all the changes that were made there. So it's really up to us as a DC Council to address these needs that's happening with our children. And I do think that ensuring that we look at our youth as our children, right? It's just not my kid, right?
Yes.
And that's just that is very personal for me, because that is why I came to be a social worker that addresses the needs of children and families. As a person that recently went through a maternal health issue, and I'm, getting a little emotional here. I wanted to be a parent myself. I wanted to have
Mm.
children and have a family. So that care and attention that I have for my community for all these years, even today, after I had to go through a really rough surgery and aren't able to biologically have children, I'm always going to put my children at the forefront of my mind because I'm just going to see them as my children.
I share in those sentiments. I'll give the people a brief testimony. We're about to get ready to close, but I'll give the people a brief testimony. For a long time, I wondered that I punished myself. Being someone in my 30s, I was raised with the belief that I don't practice sex without marriage, and that I definitely don't have kids and raise a family without first being married. And so I oftentimes used to ask myself, did I punish myself because of my beliefs and miss my opportunity to raise a family? But thank God for healing. Thank God for other ways. I definitely feel like my babies at school are my babies, and my babies in my community are my babies, and I actually really believe that if I had kids, I couldn't give these babies that needed what I bring to them. I couldn't give them what I do in my full potential and capacity. So I thank God for healing, and I thank God for you even sharing that. I believe just you sharing that will help somebody that hears that. So thank you.
Yeah, this is the first time I've shared that publicly.
Well,
Yeah.
once again, the people's voice, I feel honored,
I have a lot of love. I have a lot of love for the people's voice. I'm looking at this scan and I'm going to make a donation because this has been such a really good conversation and such a joy and opportunity to have this conversation with you and the audience.
I thank you. And we are about to close, as I mentioned, but you mentioned something at the beginning, and it stood out to me. I wanted to make sure that I gave you a moment because it's very important. And if my sisters were watching, they would say, "Why didn't you cover it?" And so let's talk about childcare. And what are your thoughts on childcare, your views, and what changes do you have in mind?
Yeah, childcare is my jam. I am a childcare champion as a policymaker who has been instrumental in helping the development and launch of My Childcare DC, Thrive by 5 DC here in the District of Columbia, Counties for Kids, that's increasing the supply of childcare throughout the country. I think that it is so critical. And just like housing, we've got to expand the supply of childcare. We know that there's just a lot of barriers because childcare is in the private market. It's not part of our public education system. So they need providers, need a lot of support to maintain that business model while they're providing care to our early learners. Infant and toddler care is so expensive. I'm glad that we have a universal pre-K system. Janice Lewis George, who's the mayoral candidate for the District of Columbia, just announced that she is proposing a universal childcare model. And I think that with me as DC council member, having that experience of being an early childhood policy champion can be able to support a universal childcare model and be a partner to our new mayor. Because we have that, right? We have that infrastructure. And shout out to my old boss, Elizabeth Kurginski, who is this assistant superintendent of early learning. We worked together. I was her policy director when we did all of those things that I mentioned earlier. She launched the first universal child care model in New Mexico. So knowing what I know, understanding what I understand about child care, we can do it in the District of Columbia. We can expand those child care slots as well as increase affordability for families no matter your income. So that's just super important. We've got to ensure affordability for our residents.
Awesome. That was so awesome. This has just been a great interview. I don't think I need to ask you too much about what are your thoughts on the upcoming mayoral candidate and what we look for. I think we've kind of already covered that throughout our conversation, uh, which also pleases me. And so before we leave, I definitely want to give you a chance to just give us your closing thoughts on
Yeah.
anything that we might not have covered that you want to leave with the people. You will be the last voice heard on this show, and then we will see you until next time.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. I so appreciate you, and definitely to the viewers who are listening to me, and your curiosity and wanting to learn a little bit more about me as a woman, as a resident of the District of Columbia for 25 years, and as a DC Council candidate. I've always loved this city. I just remember being a young woman walking down U Street going to Republic Gardens, right? Those were the days. And that's just the kind of spirit that you'll see in me as a DC Council member, a lover of Ward 1, a lover of my community who's been dedicated and committed. I was able to do so much here in this community. Being a co-founder of Georgia Avenue Thrive and really taking that community approach to addressing root cause issues in the city and in my very own community. We ensured that we removed graffiti and put up public murals, that we filled vacant properties along Georgia Avenue and made sure that we filled them with small and local businesses that are still thriving today. That's why you see Midlands and Hook Hall in St. Vincent, a Black-owned wine bar in Queequeg, and Call Your Mother. You know, that those were things that we did together to address issues with public safety and crime. And when we did that, we also made sure that our small and local businesses were supported in a manner that improved our local economy, improved the quality of life and conditions along our corridor. And that's the work that I did with the community and with the council member. And I just would appreciate doing that as your DC council member. So if you live in Ward 1, please vote for me. We have ranked choice voting coming. So I love you to rank me 1. But just continue to follow me. Pastor Mike included my website in the link there underneath my name. And just follow me on social media and would love your support.
All right, real quick, if you've ever yelled at your phone like, man, why nobody ever talks about this? Congratulations. This podcast is for you. Welcome to the People's Voice, DC, where the city finally gets the mic. And now, this ain't one of those podcasts where everybody sounds smart, but nobody actually saying anything. We talk real life, DC life. The kind of conversations you have after work, on the metro, or when the group chat gets serious out of nowhere. Yeah, we talk politics, but don't worry. Nobody yelling over each other. Nobody reading off cue cards. And definitely nobody pretending they got it all figured out. We're talking housing, money, schools, mental health, culture, faith, purpose, relationships. Basically all the stuff that actually affects your life, but somehow never gets explained right. This podcast is powered by Rising Voices of Politics and founded by Reverend Michael Campbell. But listen, you don't gotta be a politician, a preacher, or an expert in nothing to belong here. If you got opinion, questions, or just a story to tell, you already qualify. And the energy, chill, honest, a little funny. Sometimes deep, sometimes light, but always real. Catch us live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on YouTube and social media. Miss it? Cool. It drops the same night at risingvoicesdc.org, and you can listen anytime on Spotify. So whether you're outside, inside, commuting, procrastinating, or just tired of podcasts that don't sound like you, tap in, tune in, laugh a little, learn something. This is the people's voice, DC, where the conversations make sense. The people are real. And yeah, we might even say what you've been thinking.